Hi, guys, and welcome back to part two of our interview where we're doing a deep dive into Sapienza University. I'm here with my classmate, Daniel, who we're going to be doing an interview. So, in part one, we talked very much about Sapienza University as a whole and basically what future students might want to do. And in part two of the interview, we're going to focus more on like Daniel's experience with the IMAT and studying in Rome and about Rome in general. And in my opinion, like I repeat this every interview, but I would say that the part two of these series, like this entire series where we're interviewing a student from every different university, part two is more important because really you should make your choice based on the type of student you want to be and the type of city that's going to agree the most with you. So with that said, let's get started. Daniel, would you mind talking about how you prepared for the IMAT? Because you got actually quite a good score, especially considering 4 years ago. You got quite a good score. So could you like walk people through kind of how you prepared for it and like what you did and what you would recommend students to do?
Um, Personally, I think I just had a very good background to begin with because I was fresh off my A levels. I did the entire British system, and so because of the fact that I did A levels, a lot of the science aspects of it were already covered in my A level exams. So what I did was just go over all of that once again. I used my very same textbooks. Um, I tried looking up the what IMAT practice exams were like. I always recommend looking up the exams. Try doing some basic logical reasoning questions that you can find in a bunch of different books. There are a bunch of different IMAT books that are recommended. I personally didn't use any, but I always hear that I personally regret not using them. I feel like I sort of YOLO'd into it in that
When
aspect.
you say the books, which books do you mean? Because when we sat the exam, there were no dedicated IMAT books.
I remember seeing some IMAP books, or at least any sort of logical reasoning,
No,
because
so there was the Cambridge books, the Cambridge logical reasoning books, but they weren't specifically tailored to the IMAT. They were,
okay, they were not specifically tailored to the IMAT,
yeah,
but
like I just feel
generally,
like I have to clarify that because now there are like companies who are claiming that it's like done for the IMAT, but it's basically students like putting something together to sell something. So just to
okay,
clarify,
I'm aware of
Daniel
that.
does not mean the dedicated IMAT books. He means the
No, I do
books
not
that
mean
were
that.
recommended for the IMAT, which
Yes, because
there's a
they just
huge
have
difference.
basic like logical reasoning, science, all the things that you might require for the IMAT. But no, it wasn't anything specific for the IMAT, but it's something that heavily applied.
Okay, so you basically A levels. This makes a lot of sense because the exam is set by Cambridge. Cambridge also does the A levels in England. So if you use like English resources such as the Cambridge books or A level books, you're going to give yourself a much better chance because that's actually the same people who do it. And I
Mhm.
think Daniel's experience kind of just proves that.
It's a huge background.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So my question is basically like why like study in Rome? Like why would you recommend Rome over another city?
I mean, Rome is the heart of Italy. There's no other city like Rome. Like historically speaking, culturally speaking, Rome is unique. And I mean, despite that there are people who really like the chaos, but even despite the chaos, for people who might not like it as much, there's just so much that the city has to offer in terms of art, in terms of museums, in terms of city life. Um, it's always spectacular to me just walking through the city and every building just being a work of art themselves, or going to city center, it being like just so close, the university being relatively close to city center. um, it's it really adds to the experience of university life in Italy, because essentially the campus isn't limited to where the university is. You can go anywhere. You can do anything. Um, Rome also constantly has all sorts of events, maybe music events or any sort of museum event, or it constantly has things to offer. So it's a city that one does not get bored in.
Yeah. So, like, when you sit the heart of it, it's very, very true because Rome is like smack bang in the middle of Italy. So, you have like all of the stuff that like people in the north might have, but you can easily also access the south. So, you can like for a weekend go and have a beach holiday in Napoli, but just as easily, like, you can go to Abruzzo for a weekend and do skiing. So, like, Rome is kind of like a really central hub for anything, as well as like Daniel said, like there are so many events. Like I really feel before COVID there was like a food festival every other weekend. There was
Yeah,
some sort of
there
like
were.
art and culture thing. Like there are so many museums. Like Rome itself is like actually a relic, and it's kind of annoying because whenever there's like construction going on, they always have to pause it because they find something ancient that's buried.
Yeah, that's the problem with the metro, for example.
Continuously, like the Metro C has been promised for 35 years, still ongoing, because every time they dig up they're like, oh no, we can't because we just found like some ancient ruin, we just found some amazing mosaic, and it's just like, oh my god, okay, like everything is an ancient ruin here.
It's funny, but I mean, at least they intend to, I guess, not make up for it per se, but show it off. For example, the metro stop that they recently, like not so recently, but like they opened like 2 years ago, at San Giovanni. It is basically a museum showing all the pieces that they found while working on that metro stop, and I think that's quite unique.
Yeah. So, like, I think Rome is really good for people who like really busy metropolitan. Like, we do have to clarify that Rome is very, very busy. Like during tourist season, which is around April, going
Mm.
near the Vatican, like, forget it.
Yeah,
So, like, the reason why you should study in Rome is because there is literally something to do for every type of person. You can go skiing one weekend and to the beach the next weekend. You like every weekend you'll have like some sort of food or art or cultural festival. However, like you do need to be able to embrace the chaos and the busyness.
that's true.
So, do you think studying medicine in Italy is the right choice? Like, would you recommend it based on your experience?
Based on my experience, yes, I would say so because I feel like uh, in Italy, even though you might not get a lot of practical experience, especially in the early years, you build a very, very strong theory based. It's a very, very strong theory based education, which you can then apply later on when you're wherever you might work into. You can put it into practice. Um, I think it works out for people who are able to also study independently, and because I mean you're not going to feel that pressure from professors or from the university, from anything, to push you to study. It is completely up to you, and
Yeah.
it it plays into the fact that we don't really get many assignments throughout the year or anything. Exams we can basically organize to whatever schedule we might want. And so, if you want to study in Italy, you have to acknowledge the fact, you have to consider whether you are an independent learner.
Yeah.
Because yes, the professors do offer a lot. They are always there for you if you need something, but you have to actively ask for it. They're never going to be babying you. And but I mean, you do have a lot of liberty. If you want to go into doing more practical work because you might think it's not enough, you can just ask the professors. It really is up to the individual. And I think that applies in other universities in
Yeah,
Italy as well.
basically. I mean, though, like the question is not like specifically Rome, but like in Italy in general. Because the main concern is like, can I go to other countries? Yes, you can if you are willing to sit the equivalency exam and whatever their standard of application is. But also the other is like the practical experience, and like Daniel said, the practical experience is kind of what you make it. You are going to be given a very strong theoretical foundation, and it's kind of up to you to make up for the practical. It's not ideal, but it's not like a huge issue
Mhm.
either. So you would recommend it. If you had asked me 3 years
Yes.
ago, I would have said no. Now I definitely would recommend it as well, personally.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah, I know
moving,
your history.
but moving on, would you say that you need to know Italian?
I mean, yes, you really should learn Italian. I mean, you don't have to know you don't necessarily have to know Italian before you arrive. You can just pick it up while you're here. And I mean, the university itself is not going to require you to learn Italian, but patient interaction, for example, is going to be in Italian. But I mean, apart from the university aspect of it, if you want to incorporate yourself into Italian society or do any sort of events outside of university, you really should know Italian because, let's be honest, Italians don't really speak English.
Yeah. The truth of it is that like you're not technically required in Sapienza to speak Italian when you enter or throughout your clinical years. Like you can enter the clinical years without Italian. But the truth is you are going to be doing yourself a massive disservice, both
Hmm.
in day-to-day life, but also in the hospital life. Because while professors will translate which for you, they won't translate everything. They'll just try to give you the general gist, and you will miss out on a lot of subtleties. You will also miss out on a lot of opportunities of being able to go and shadow the professors and do practicals and even departments that you can do your thesis in if you don't speak Italian. So
Hmm.
while it is not a requirement, like I cannot emphasize enough that you really, really, really should learn. And you should, in fact, start learning before you even get here. I really wish that I had started learning Italian the second I had decided that I was going to sit the IMAT, like way back in May or June, whenever it was. Like the day I decided I was going to sit the IMAT, I wish I had started studying, even if I wasn't going to get in, because like the cost of having to study for 2 or 3 months would have been worth it because at worst it would have just been a hobby, and at best case scenario it would have helped me so much if I
Hmm.
had studied Italian before I got in. So I personally like I'm sure Daniel agrees as well. It's not a requirement, but like you really should, really
Yeah.
really should.
I think personally I was able to get away with not learning Italian before I came because I also have a Spanish background. And
I
so,
mean, yeah, could be, but okay, Daniel's gone again. But you can get away. Like we have classmates now who can't speak a word of Italian. We're in
I'm
fifth
back.
year now.
Sorry.
It's okay. We're in fifth year now, and we do have classmates who can't speak a word of Italian, but like their life is in no way easy or recommended, I
Yeah,
would
no,
say.
no.
Yeah,
And it's
just
not
learn
going to get
Italian.
any, it's only going to get harder.
Yeah, it's going to get harder. You're going to make like getting your documents harder. Finding a house is going to be infinitely harder. Just like going to the hospital is going to be harder. Like finding like internship opportunities is going to be harder. So it is not a requirement to get into Sapienza. It is not a requirement to learn it while you're here. Like clinical years, like in some universities, they lock the clinical years behind an Italian assessment. It's not like that here. And in first year, Sapienza does offer free classes, free Italian classes to first years. But I would say it's not enough, and you should really like make a super active
Mm-hmm.
effort before and when you arrive here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the weather.
Fascinating. I mean, Italian weather, Roman weather. It's very Mediterranean. Um, I feel like it won't change too much in Italy. I guess in the north it can be a bit colder, but let's talk about Rome. Um, Winters may get rainy. It rarely ever snows. It snowed once here in Rome,
In 5 years,
which
yeah.
happened which happened 2 years ago, or three. Was it
It
something like
doesn't
that?
matter.
But anyway, winters are mm, they might reach temperatures of four, three,
Five,
two.
yeah. No, it doesn't go that low. So Rome has very, very mild winters, especially compared to, say, the north. It is, I would say, either sunny or incredibly gray and rainy. However, the low temperatures don't really drop below like 5 or 6. I would say, like on average, the very, very low end is around 5 degrees. And you do get like some really bright sunny days despite it being like in the middle of the winter. So we do get like very mild winters. We get really nice autumns and springs where it's like basically t-shirt and shorts weather for like
Oh yeah,
months on end. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's very sunny. It's very dry. It's very crisp. Like the air is clear. However, the summers are
summer's
awful,
summer's terrible.
awful, awful. You
Summer
stick to
temperatures.
furniture, like you sweat from places you didn't even know you can sweat from. It's really honestly just disgusting. There's no other word for it other than disgusting. How wet the summers are because like it's so humid and muggy and like basically from June till September is like a complete like wipeout. Like if you don't have AC, you are going to be suffering. It's
No,
disgusting.
that's actually quite true.
Yeah,
This
but the
temperature reaches
spring.
like 40 even,
To me, it's not
35,
even like the
40.
temperature. To me, it's like how humid it is. That's
Mm.
problematic for me. But the spring and the fall are incredible, and the summer is awful. The winter is mild. So like obviously, the further south you go, the nicer the weather is. The further north you go, the worse the weather is. That's just the way it is. So Rome kind of is like in the middle of both areas. Again, Rome smack bang middle of Italy, very Mediterranean. So its weather is a lot more mild compared to say like the winters in Milan versus the summers in Messina.
Mm.
So yeah, it's nice. It gets really bad thunderstorms. So like it
Yeah,
doesn't rain often, but when it does rain, it like is very, very intense. Like car alarms go off during thunderstorms. A few years ago, we had a storm where people were dying actually from the wind. The wind was so strong that it was taking like trees up and hitting people, which was killing them. So
yeah.
like
The occasional tree that just fell down.
yeah, so the storms like the rain is very infrequent, I would say. Like it's not very often, but sometimes like when it hits it like really like it's like the sky's open to
Hmm.
pour out. Okay, so different activities for students
Different activities for students. In a not in the university aspect, right? Or just in general.
in general.
In general. I mean, it really depends on how how active you might be. I mean, for example, gyms you can find all over Rome,
Yeah.
if that's the type of activity you go for. Um, you could, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Rome is a cultural hotspot. You can go to,
Okay, Daniel is gone once again, so I will take over. Rome being the metropolitan city that it is and how big it actually is, there is something to do for every type of student. You can have board game nights in one night, and then the next day you can go clubbing, and then the next day you can go for an aperitivo, and the next day you can go to like a modern art exhibition where, you know, like everything is contemporary. Like there is a type of activity to do for every single type of student. There are obviously also like campus parties that are had. Like they actually drain the big fountain for Minerva. Like they drain that and it becomes like a little dance pit. So like there, well, this is pre-COVID. I have to clarify everything's pre-COVID. So there are
hopefully
so many.
post-COVID. Hopefully post-COVID comes soon
Hopefully
enough.
post COVID, but we don't know when that's going to be. So I don't want first
Mm.
years to think that like they're going to come into first year and expect like a super awesome freshers week where they're going to get to dance in a fountain. So there are like so many different activities. Obviously, like Rome and Milan are going to be the most advantageous cities for this. Like if you go to Pavia where there's like one bar, you're not going to get this. But like I said, like there is literally hundreds, if not thousands, of different activities going on every single
It's
night.
so vast.
Yeah,
The city is very, very huge.
it's huge. It's impossible for us to be like, oh yeah, and there's this, because there's literally food festivals, art galleries, like parties, clubs. Like during the summer, they by the river they have a jazz festival where there's like pop up beaches. They literally like pour sand and put like chaiselongs and like there's like live jazz bands playing, and this is on the river, and there's boat parties, and honestly, it's just a huge city. And this is not like special to Rome. Like I'm sure Milan has like hundreds of activities just like this. It's just a really big city thing. With big city, big population, you're going to have a lot more variety.
Yeah, and speaking of big cities are also for, for all football fans out there, big cities have big teams. And so,
Oh, I never even thought of that. That people might be big
yeah,
sports
yeah.
fans. Yeah.
And so I guess that's another thing that you might want to consider if you're a fan of whatever club you might be. If say you're a fan of Inter or Milan for whatever reason, you might want want to lean towards that. Or if you want to be a very proud Roma fan, then you can
Nice.
go to Stadio Olimpico. Lazio we don't talk about.
Yeah. But I totally forgot, like, also there are massive stadiums in both
Yeah,
Rome and Milan where you can go to like sporting events.
yeah. I mean, it's not just football. They have other sorts of events there as
That's
well.
true. The first sporting event that I had ever been to was actually a rugby match here in Italy. And for those of you who don't know, New Zealand is one of the best rugby teams in the world. And in Ireland, getting tickets to a New Zealand match would cost like hundreds of euro. And I got to see the New Zealand team for like 30 euro here. So yeah, I
Yeah,
totally forgot sporting events are actually a big thing.
yeah. Yeah. Speaking of like, cheaper prices, for example, I know that for Roma games, they might offer student discounts from time to time, and you can even go to a game for 10 euro.
That's amazing. Yeah, I never even thought of that. That's really good point to make. So hundreds of activities. Uh, I'm not going to really talk about getting around Rome because I made a huge article on this and I will link it in the description if you want to go read, where I talked about the different transport types and the ticket types and how you can get around. And now there's even like bike sharing and car sharing and scooter sharing where you can actually go on like electric scooters all around the city. So we move on
Oh,
to
wait.
our.
Quick mention. While I had disconnected for whatever reason, did you mention the fact that, Rome has so many tourist attractions? Like the
I
huge.
mean, I think it goes without say that like Rome is the most touristic city in
Yeah.
Italy, I would say. Like literally one of the wonders of the New World, like the Colosseum
Yes.
alone. It's yeah, it is. Rome is like probably the most visited city, I would say, in Italy
Yeah.
for sure. Like touristically speaking,
For sure.
obviously like beaches stuff and wise, you like Bari and Napoli would be busier. Skiing wise, Milan would be busier, but like actual touristic stuff wise, Rome is the busiest city, I would say, in Italy, without a doubt. So let's quickly talk about the different neighborhoods in Rome. I'm actually going to take this conversation a bit more because I've searched for a lot of different houses, so I kind of basically know. I am going to write a more in-depth article about this, so like don't worry about panicking, like trying to write if you're watching this about what neighborhoods that you need to take a note of. In general, around the university itself, you have four areas. You have Policlinico, which is where the hospital is. You have Bologna, which is like around the university again. You have San Lorenzo, which is right next to the university, and you have Tiburtina. And the expenses kind of go. Policlinico is the most expensive because there's obviously a lot of doctors and interns living there, and it's right next to the hospital, and it's kind of nicer. So the prices are higher. Then you have Bologna, which is more student oriented. This is still more expensive compared to your other two options, but the accommodation is quite a bit nicer. And then you have San Lorenzo, which is right next to the university. It's a lot cheaper, but obviously the quality is a bit lower in terms of like the housing you get and also the area and stuff. Then you have Tiburtina, which is a little bit further, but it has like it's a good compromise between quality and price and proximity, because then as you move a bit further, when you go towards oh my gosh, I can't remember the name now.
Wait, I kind of lost.
Like Porto Nacho. So there's an area called Porto Nacho, which is like a little bit further, but you can go by a bus or a tram or by bike. So this is a bit further, but like it's a lot nicer area. It's cheaper. It's like it has a very good like international community. For some reason, there's a lot of Latin American restaurants. And then you move more towards the center of Rome. You get areas like Castro Pittorio, and that is much more expensive, but like you're in a very central location.
City center is going to be a lot more
Yeah.
expensive.
And then you move to the really nice part of town, which is basically across the river and like where
Yeah,
the
I
Vatican
mean,
is.
you also have to consider Parioli. Parioli being that's
Oh,
also
yeah,
not
yeah,
too far
behind
from the university.
Borghese.
Yeah, just behind the Villa Borghese, essentially.
But that place is like, I would say, above the budget of most students.
Could be, could be. But then, I mean, if you're going to live in Rome, you can literally just look anywhere along the metro line, in my opinion,
Yeah,
or the
for
tram
sure.
lines. Maybe not rely too much on the buses too much, but I mean, depends really where you live. But
Yeah,
yeah, anywhere along the metro line is works out perfectly, in my
yeah.
opinion.
For sure. Like there is like options for every type of person, I would say. You just need to usually like sacrifice from one part, like either like cost, proximity, or quality. It's kind of like that triangle where you can only pick two, like cost, proximity, and quality, and it's like pick two. But yeah, I would say there's something available for every type of budget. You just need to like give up on one of the luxuries almost.
Yeah, it's highly variable.
Yeah. Okay. So based on that, the cost of living in Rome is obviously it is a metropolitan city. When I looked up the indexes, Milan was the highest, but Rome was the third highest. Genoa,
Sure.
for some reason, was second most expensive, which I didn't
Huh.
expect.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all. But so Rome is kind of expensive. Like how would you summarize the cost of living in Rome?
Um, the thing is, I have been comparing it to, I had lived in Israel previously, so I've been comparing it to that a
Yeah,
lot of
no.
the time, and it's just completely different because Israel is a very, very expensive country. Rome as a whole, I think it really depends on on where you live, if you're trying to budget, um, what kind of things you want to do, how social you might be. Say you want to be going out frequently, you're going to have to be paying high fees for, let's say, some sort of party, some sort of aperitivo, anything like that. Um, but the city itself, let's say supermarkets or restaurants, let's lean towards restaurants. Restaurants, you can find all sorts of prices, whether they might be more student friendly uh, options such as pizzas for €4 or pastas for five, up to much. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
fine dining, but I mean,
I've
there's
I,
just
I've seen pasta for
wide.
40 euro as well.
Yeah, no, it really
Yeah.
is highly variable.
Yeah, it's hard to estimate a cost of living, but I would say like depending on the type of housing you choose, I would say the average you're going to pay is like 400 euro for a private room. Realistically, 400 to 500 euro.
Hmm.
And then like if you go out like once or twice a week, I would say that you're expecting every time you go out to pay about 10 euro. Like when you consider a drink and a meal, it's around 10 euro probably. Your transport ticket for 1 year is 250 euro, so say that's 20 euro a month. So like the expenses do add up. It's definitely on the more like for me coming from Dublin, I find Rome very cheap as well. Same as you coming from Israel, I find
Hmm.
Rome very affordable. I'm actually shook it after coming from Dublin at how cheap it can be. But when I talk to people from like say Bari or Messina or even Napoli, I'm actually like shocked at how much we pay.
Ah, okay, okay, I was quite aware. But I mean,
Yeah,
for example, huh?
yeah.
But for example, like for such a major city, 250 for an annual public transport
Oh no, it's cheap.
is so cheap.
No, yeah, it's very cheap. But like, say if you live in Pavia, like you don't even need a public transport. You can just get a bike
Uh,
and you can literally cycle from one end of the village to the other. Note that I
yeah,
didn't call it a town. Um, so it really highly depends. Daniel is gone again, but basically the cost of living, I would say, is on the higher average of the different cities. Milan is, according to the index, higher. After talking to Rosh, I don't feel Milan is the highest. I feel like Rome might be the highest, actually. So, from talking to someone from Milan, it seems that Rome is higher. According to the standardized indexes, Milan is higher. And basically, everywhere else is going to be cheaper than Rome and Milan, though. Those are
yeah,
like your two
it's the
main
price to pay
cities.
for a metropolitan city.
Exactly. It's the price you pay for being like the hub of everything and having access to millions of events and millions of people. Like it's
Hmm.
just yeah, it's just the way it is. It's worldwide like this.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think that covers everything. Can you think of anything, Daniel, that you would like to add for students or what you wish you knew before you came over?
Huh.
No. Okay.
No, I guess
I guess you'll write a blog post if you think of anything.
for
Uh,
sure, for sure.
okay.
Maybe
So
maybe the bureaucracy in Italy as a whole, it's something to consider.
yeah, but this is more like getting to know La Sapienza and Rome, a city.
Okay.
The bureaucracy is
Right.
bad. Expect long lines. It's more crowded. The population is higher, so it's going to be more crowded when you go and try to do stuff. That's a given. Bureaucracy is a really big problem here. In Sapienza, bureaucracy is a huge problem as well. But again, this is more like a Italy specific problem, not really like
Yeah.
a Rome thing.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
So, okay, then I guess that's that. Do you want to say goodbye?
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. This was a
No, thank you
very
for allowing me to quickly get through all of these ideas so that I can put a video out so that people can subscribe and like. And if they got this far, and expect a video next week as well.
fantastic.
Bye!